Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Narratorica podcast, the international version. Masha couldn't be here, but I'm with you. I'm Evgeny Blankov. I write shit and I design shit, and I occasionally teach shit. We are here joined with finally a Polish person, Marta Fijak.
Hello, I'm Marta.
Did I pronounce it right, actually?
More or less is Marta Fijak, but doesn't matter. Don't worry, I'm not even trying to pronounce yours. So we even.
I'm pretty sure we got closest than most, but still.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Yes, and today we're going to talk about 11-bit and Frostpunk specifically, as Marta was a designer on Frostpunk and is a lead game designer at 11-bit currently. So she will also be a guest speaker on the Winter Narrative Design 101 course. So this will be kind of, on the course, it will be kind of like this, but more in depth. So let's start with the usual thing. Marta, tell us about yourself.
Oh. Hello, I'm Marta. I'm 30. I'm from Poland. No, but a little bit more serious. I'm a biologist and a computer scientist by my university degree, but game designer by pure love. I worked in the field last 10 years, commercially last 6 or 7 years. I did everything that you can imagine making in games. So I was indie, I was going free to play, I was doing things like Frostpunk and 11-bit studios. I was both programming and designing. And for the past 4 or 5 years, I mostly focus on the design. I did the society in Frostpunk, and what is my angle is to deliver narration and to deliver meaning through systems, because I come from a systemic background, from a technical background, and I try with systems to tell stories.
How did you end up with this fascination with systems and telling stories through systems?
I think systems were with me for quite a long time because, as I told you, I studied biology. I studied and I have a master in experimental biology. And what I was doing back then was describing the biology and the world around us and the world of animals, to be precise, with systems. So, with mathematical formulas and relationships between different beings. So putting the complex into a system to get a certain dynamic. You know, you've got the most basic models of the prey and the hunter and all of that, and you know the graphs. And going from that, you can describe more and more complex things and see more and more complex behaviors from the systems.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I actually loved games for my whole life, and I always wanted to make games. I just didn't imagine it to be possible. This is why I wanted to be a scientist. So that my fascination with systems, I think it came from games, translated to biology, and when I went back to games, it just re-emerged with a bigger power. And as I think that every medium has its own voice and its own way of communication, and I and I think for games, systems and interactivity that comes from systems is that unique voice. So if we want to provide meaning and story in terms of our medium, then the systems would be the best place to do that, because different kind of stories and different mediums can use their own special things.
Mm-hmm.
That was convoluted. Sorry.
Whenever you're talking about narrative, it gets convoluted eventually. And especially with translating, because what you've said about biology and the systems, it's basically what emergence is usually in like completely simulated environments, like Dream World or Prison Architect or something. A bunch of stupid things become smart together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
kind
but
like
yeah, but I think there is fine balance, because you can imagine systems and that kind of emerging things as a line, how much of that you have in your game, and you can have none of that, and you've got the uncharted, the cinematic experience, and you've got the other end. Oh, that would be make sense. The other end, the Rimworld, the Prison Architect, the Dwarf Fortresses, where it's 100% systemic, but on the other hand, they tend to turn into anecdote generators. Those stories that comes from that emerging systems are not always so profound and so meaningful, and not the most easy way for an authorial voice in design. So I believe that there is a way of a middle with narrative content and systems mixed together quite strongly to create a unique experience, but still with something more in that, like with more concrete thing that we want to convey. And this is what we try to do with Frostpunk, because it's a systemic game, but with a heavy narrative part imbued in this system.
Well, you know that I'm going to ask for examples now.
Yeah. Non-alcoholic. So
again, it's explicit.
yeah, and we can go explicit with the content, but the beer is non-alcoholic and it's really, really tasty. Okay, getting back. So we tried actually to convey, because on the society level we will try to convey a few different things, but among them it was the boiling frog. It's called creeping normality. It's a term in sociology that when a society turns totalitarian, it doesn't do it overnight. It's not like, oh, today it's a wonderful day. The sun is shining, the sky is blue. I go to sleep. I woke up. It's Nazi Germany. So it does not happen like that. It goes with small steps of pushing the boundaries further and further and further and further, and boom. Not suddenly, just gradually, you are in a really, really different place than you expected to be. And that's the creeping normality, or the boiling frog. It's called differently, the boiling frog. And that was one of the things that we wanted to picture inside of the game. And of course, you can do it purely systemic without any support of narrative content, like actually written things, because you can imagine a system of human having efficiency and some kind of willpower matter, and the efficiency goes up every time you put the totalitarian a little bit more, but the willpower is going down, and it can have some kind of consequences. It will work as a system and it will give you the dynamic that you want to, but without a little story arcs or little stories that can be triggered by that system, everything is going to fall a little bit flat. It's going to be really, really intellectual, and not many people will look at those numbers and be like, yeah, man, yeah, this is how it happens. No. So when you go with the middle way, you, on the other one hand, you've got the systems, but those systems can from time to time trigger a little narration that changes depending on your decisions inside of the system, but it's still a piece of written content that will show you what is happening. So in Frostpunk, for example, when you are moving in the direction of faith more and more and more, of course the parameter underneath were going up and up and up, and people were going down and down and down. But if you reach a certain threshold, we will present you with one of the few stories. One of them was, for example, people, the faith guards, attacking a person for being different, implied he was a homosexual, and giving the player a choice what to do, to go further or no. And that kind of consequences would be extremely not readable in a pure systemic way. You couldn't go so broad with the topic if you do it in pure systemic way for it to be readable.
Yeah, I would imagine it would require like this particular person would have his own systemic shit that would actually have to be shown up, and which I would assume would be like extreme undertaking, especially when people are it's big.
Yeah, but you can do that. You can focus on a single person and show that story with For
Mm-hmm.
example, Crusader Kings system of tags and all of that, because Crusader Kings 2 has a really nice system for humans, and
Mm-hmm.
it creates quite nice narratives. Uh, but the game was still a survival city builder, a society survival city builder. So we couldn't take everything and be like, yes, so this is my biggest society simulator I have, and there's no survival and a city builder.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't fly like that. So there was a need to find a balance, and this is why society is systemic, but it's heavily supported by actual short narrative bits written up to three. They are called call to actions. If you play Frostpunk, from time to time, the screen will pop up, and those are the call to actions that you
Mm-hmm.
can go in and see the little story bits.
Mm-hmm. But since you mentioned the balance, how did you balance those? Like, I need to go back a bit. Like, this is from taken from the phrase about This War of Mine and from Grzegorz Mazur, about that they have balance for emotions, This War of Mine. Did you do the same thing in Frostpunk?
So, of course, every time, I think every time you balance a game, because it's matter what kind of balance he was talking about. But if we are balancing system, we are always balancing it for emotions. And I don't think that part is unique for 11 Studios. Everyone does it. If you are doing a survival horror, you cannot give plenty of ammo, because you are not going to give that feeling of being afraid, scared,
Mm-hmm.
that the scarcity of resources, because this is something that builds tension in you. So every time you balance for a certain emotion. In case of Frostpunk, that was of course also true. The whole economy had to be a scarcity economy, because it's a survival game, and there's no
Mm-hmm.
pressure to have hard decision if food is plenty and coal is plenty and everyone is feeling great, because if we have supplies for next 3 years, there's no reason to eat Bob. And we wanted to ask you, where is the good moment to eat Bob?
Mm-hmm.
But Frostpunk, and this is something that was also true for This War of Mine, because those games touch more serious subject and want to depict some form of reality and some form of actual human values that we care about. So there was no space for balancing just in terms of engagement, because if we are telling people, if we were telling a story of disabled people inside of Frostpunk, we couldn't balance them to make that story an engagement. We also had to balance it to reflect on our own values and our own perception of the topic, and it touched every aspect. So yeah, I agree with Krzysiek, but also more.
Yeah, I think that like the point is that like most of the game is just balancing for engagement and more fun, and maybe sometimes the pacing to make it so that it's more fun there, even from the narrative perspective. It's 11, like the current 11-bit games, they're just famous for making people really depressed.
Nah.
I'm exaggerating. I'm exaggerating.
So yes, due to the subjects that we touch, those games can be harsh. In my perspective, This War of Mine is a lot more harsh than Frostpunk.
Mm-hmm.
Frostpunk is still, those are not individuals, and those topics that we want to move here are more intellectual in a sense. They are less visceral, less empathic on a single human level. They are more global. How far will you go? How far would you go? So I think Frostpunk is less. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find a perfect place to sit.
Mm-hmm.
Frostpunk is less depressing, but yeah, still both are showing a really grim part of reality. But we don't want to have it grim just for sake of being grim, and finding that balance actually between how grim we want it to be was a huge challenge in Frostpunk, especially when we are talking about society consequences, because those stories are consequences.
Mm-hmm.
If we turn them too grim and too dark, it just shifts the whole game in a cartoon, and you couldn't take it seriously, because it was like, oh, it's so horrible, then it's unbelievable, it's just bollocks.
Yeah, I would imagine. Although at some point when I was playing it, I did never went to the faith part
Mm-hmm.
because uh, atheist all the way. But with I went to because in the main scenario you're forced to go into one or another, as far as I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point it was New Order, and this is just like the point that just says that at least it looks like there is in the Book of Laws. This is like a point where if you take this one, there is no way back or something like that because it's just on
Mm-hmm.
fire and everything and so on.
Yeah.
It just looks extremely. Plus, like it's New Order. It's like after that, yeah, I'm going full fascist probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. There was a huge problem with that decision in the early versions. You did not have to choose one, like the top or the bottom, because when I think about them, the top and the bottom. But the faith and the order, there
Mm-hmm.
was one gigantic ideology tree. It had both of those, so it had a branch to the top with the order, branch to down to the faith.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but while we were playing with that, there was a problem because everybody was playing a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
here, and what you turned up was not a good place. Definitely not a good place if you went too far, but it wasn't focused. It was hard to deliver a concrete message and to give you a city that's unique and has that strong visual representation and strong vibe. Which way is it going? So this is why we eventually decided just to split them to two
Mm-hmm.
different trees. And in both faith and order, you can have a quite alright city, not going total fascist, not going total fanatics. Uh, but due to how they are represented, it's hard to tell that you can play with them in a nice way.
Mm-hmm.
Nice way, yeah. Because there's so much of, especially in Europe, so much of cultural context, especially for the New Order route. Then when you see it and when you see the first three laws, you are like, yep, I know my history, I know where this is going. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine there's a lot of connotation with both faith and order, and like there's a lot of just background, like background information and pre-existing knowledge that just influences. Like for me, just nope, not taking faith. Nope,
Yes.
whatever is going on there is way worse.
Yeah, so yeah, that was actually quite an interesting thing to see.
For me, just going for
Yes.
me.
Yeah. I totally understand that. And that was quite interesting to see reception around the world with different cultural backgrounds to different part of Frostbank and to different part of those laws, and some people being like, yeah, of course, this is the only right way. It always worked like that, so let's go full order. And some people being like, you just said, like, nope, both of them, I know where they are going. And it's an interesting dynamic. This is the thing
Mhm.
that happens when you release your work to other people and see how they react, which is
Yeah, especially if it's
always
kind of like
fascinating.
that charged.
Yeah.
Mhm. Did you ever consider like I know you have a golden path, a sort of
Yes.
which, as far as as far as I know, I took because I never went New Order completely, just a bit, just some
Mm-hmm.
propaganda, and survived at least the main scenario. But have you ever went with like a nice route,
So,
like a properly designed society tree that has nice stuff?
so the golden path requires the golden path is actually a reflection of kind of mine and Kuba values, Kuba being the lead game designer, and this is a set of things we together decided that those are not pushing the line. So it's not only not going deep enough in faith or deep enough in order, it's also working kids, cannibalism, and a lot of little laws
Mm-hmm.
that for us were too far.
Mm-hmm.
And in my perspective, you can finish the game in a nice way that you can achieve the golden path, which in my opinion is just okay, just being human, but you have to be extremely good with the economical part of the game. So this is it is purposely designed that way, that if you are good enough on that side, you can pick just a handful of nice laws of educating kids and having just a church, because why not with just a church? There's no problem. And
Mm-hmm. So you never had an idea of like order, faith, and sunshine and rainbows as a third option?
Oh, no. As there was no sunshine and rainbows. There was hedonism, more or less.
Oh.
Yeah. So we had the things that I first started with 4 routes actually. There were the faith, the order, the technocracy, and the hedonism. And the technocracy is the classical cyberpunk tell of pushing it further. So how much of your humanity will you sacrifice for efficiency in terms of just losing yourself for the machines, to be more or less. And the hedonism part was more of drugs enhancing and just a party at the end of the world approach. And yes, we are dying, but we are plenty, and just, to the future. So all of them were grim. All 4 of them were really grim. We did not ever had a rainbow and sunshine way. Not in that, because you've got two trees. You've got the ideological tree, and this is the one that I'm talking about, and you've got the adaptation tree. And in the adaptation tree, there are some nicer things like teaching kids. And we were also thinking about expanding on that to have some, cultural things like libraries and all of that, but not in the base game. We will see what the future will show.
I would say that hedonism is probably what I would have picked eventually, just playing on its own.
Yeah, I was quite strongly applying to get a full-funded research stipendium to do all of the drugs just to do a research for Frostpunk. But yeah. We just to get the message clear and to focus, as you do at the beginning. You exploded things and then you cut, and the hedonism part died. That's actually sad, but what to do?
No, it's game development. Something had to go.
A lot of things went. That's normal. You've got that weird shape of doing games. You explode so many ideas and then you cut and cut and cut. I think it was Genova Chem told that, the guy who did Journey, that the game is like a Japanese garden. It's finished when you take away the last unneeded piece. So yeah, I kind of agree with that.
Yeah, and cutting is usually like the best that you can do for the script, and I'm assuming for the design itself too. So I want to bring it a little bit back to the society design in more broad strokes. We touched on some of the aspects, but as this is kind of feels like either a very specialized thing or just a unique thing. So can you technically say it's like the basis of the society design in general terms?
So they knew from the very beginning, they as 11-bit studios, that they want to have tough decisions and some kind of society inside of the game. But when I came, oh no, I'm going to sneeze. Wait. Okay. We will fight with that. So when I came to the game, it was, I think, 8 months after it started development in the form, because that game was previously something different. It was an industrial. It was called industrial. Then it switched. It became Frostpunk. A few months, and I came. And how it looked back then, it was you just play, put buildings, pop, suddenly a black screen just out of the blue with a beautiful question: we ran out of food, should we eat each other? Yes, no. That was the whole society. No discontent, no hope, no laws, no little stories, just we're hungry, should we eat each other? And also, we don't have enough people to walk, should kids walk, because they will fit into the mines nicely, and it works in terms of team and in terms of time. So at that stage, I was given the task to design the actual society, to make that game, to make society playable. Because sure, there is some kind of group individuals, a set of individuals in there, but there's no society gameplay, and the society itself is not exciting. That from time to time just want to eat Bob. So then the long and hard iterative process of designing a society started. Of course, the first, uh, but because I started from the Oscar Wilde quote, if I recall correctly, that there is no such a thing as society. As you can imagine, it ranked really well. Marta, do society? No, there is no such a thing. But there's just a collection of individuals. So, of course, the first intuition was to do a full-fledged organic tax system, a little bit like in the Crusader Kings. So just not to have any overall parameters, just have every single person have a set of wants, of needs, of what they're going to do. And aggregating all that derived the cultural change that we wanted, and the society change that we wanted. And fully fledged huge system like that takes years to fine tune, like remote, or that was the dream. So we kind of went with a hybrid approach. So actually all of the humans in South Park, not in South Park, in Frostpunk, sorry, really similar, like, yeah. Every single one of them has actually a set of needs and a set of their own personal statistics. We started with almost 40, I think, and that was the big Crusader Kings approach. And at one moment, I even had the need that was called Reason to Live, because, yeah, because when you think about it, the existentialism as a philosophical movement exploded after the World War II, after people have saw what can happen and what we are, and how what traumatic events can meet us, and that was the point to ask why. And that was quite natural to have those humans in Frostpunk, not Soulpunk, Frostpunk, to have that existentialism rise earlier, because the Great Frost and cities dying and people freezing to death on that unimaginable scale should be a similar occurrence for them, and a lot of things happen. So that was a good point to have an existentialist movement, and that was actually the base for why do we need guard towers, why do we need churches, why do we need those different places, to give those people reason to live, because what's the point? So they had that need that actually did not stick till the end because it was not readable enough, but they had all of those needs, and in the final game they have, I think, if I remember correctly, 14 or 11 of them, and there are mostly the lower parts of the Maslow pyramid of needs, right? The basic Maslow pyramid of needs. So the needs that they have are the, I need a shelter, I need food, I need a warm place to stay because cold is a thingy, I need health, so not to die, and so long, and most of them are along these lines. And those needs, if they are not satisfied, I don't want to work 24 hours a day, and there are many, those, but around 14, and we actually average those needs from the whole population, with some weights, of course, here and there, and this is what creates the discontent parameter. And the discontent parameter is taken from every single one of them. And there are some weird needs, like I have a need for things not to change. Sounds weird, but if you go far enough into a faith or order thing, and if you start to demolish the faith or order things, people will get upset because they want to have the things how they were. So if you go deep enough in a certain way, they will want to have that because they already got indoctrinated. That's the idea. Standing behind it. But those kind of needs and parametrical values, they work great for organic protests, they work great for, yeah, we want food, we want something, for burning the city, but they didn't work too well for those more difficult things, for the boiling frog, because then if you want to show that consequences, it starts to get hard to read, because you've got we don't have that need, but you have that indoctrination need, and it's in many people, but those people start to die out, new people come in, and suddenly your indoctrination is smaller, it's getting bigger, the visuals are changing, you know what's happening. And on that stage, on that level of that higher level message, we wanted to have it as clear as possible. So we started from the simulation in the humans and then moved to higher level decisions, introducing actually the book of laws, because the game did not have the book of laws from the very beginning. It was added 6-7 months after I came in, and we started to build that higher level change on that higher level, not on that lowest society level. Yes. I talked a lot, so do you have any questions? Because, I'm everywhere.
You're losing the... so, but Book of Laws was also a part of society design, right?
Yes.
So not to ask how did you go about it? Like, what was the... how did you like, I mean, some of them are pretty obvious, like, right? Some like cannibalism, like where you put dead bodies of and of children. But were some of them like requiring debate from the systemic perspective?
All of them were a long debate, and there are a few that were no-brainers, and they were there from a really early stage. And you are right, the walking kids, the what to do with the dead, the cannibalism law, which is actually hidden in the game. You can unlock it, but it's hidden. What was also a non-brainer? Those things. And then we were iterating on them a lot. A lot of them did not make a cut to a final game. For example, we've got that part about putting some ease to our people. This is actually a thing that was a little bit, it's a little reminder of the hedonist route that we did not have. But there's that putting alcohol with food, having a public house, and having mistresses, I think this is the term in English, in the public house, like ladies of pleasure. We actually had another one after the public house, and that was the one to show what can happen if you allow people to treat other people as service. That was something that we call the liberation law, and it was that whatever happens in a public house stays in a public house. So it actually meant that whatever the fantasy of the little human in Frostpunk was, she could have make it. And on the systemic side, what it meant that the workers of the public house will from time to time get injured and on a rare occasions killed. And that was the undertone of that law. And on the systemic side, it works perfectly fine because you have the risk-reward trade-off and everything. There's a puzzle to solve how to have that law and don't have the city collapse. But For me, that law was a narrative and a tonal problem, because we didn't have enough time to make proper consequences to that and to depict that, and kind of it made the suffering of sexual workers just a gimmick, without a proper tone, without a proper discussion, without telling anything, just being like, yeah, and we are so hardcore that we have violence against sex workers because we
Mm-hmm.
can. So that was the one that stood out for me, that we cut away.
Mm-hmm.
After quite a lot of iteration, we even have like full render and the picture and the part of the Book of Laws.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but there was a lot of them. We iterated on them really heavily, almost till year before the release, because there you
Mm-hmm.
have to do the pretty pictures and everything. And still, some of them with the pretty pictures were cut or were added.
Mm-hmm. What were your metrics for iteration? And I use metrics incredibly loosely.
Yes, I have. So it's 4 centimeters. No, I don't understand the metrics.
No, by like what influenced? How did you figure out whether something works or not? Basically,
Oh, no,
like for
okay.
metrics in this case, I would be like for a normal game, like okay, like we have two sets of people, like 15 and 15, like a proper sample size, like what these liked, what those don't like, like control and
Okay. So no focus test, no that product approach to see if it sticks. It's of course we tested internally really long, and for I think the first I don't remember. Uh, I don't remember the dates, but the first external tests when we actually asked someone to come in was already with some of the laws having nice proper graphics. So it was really long into the development.
Mm-hmm.
And how it works, how the iteration works is like, okay, this is the implemented version of design, because everything is tested inside of a game, and if that's too pricey, we just make prototypes, paper prototypes, Unity prototypes, whatever. The Book of Laws started as a Unity prototype, like a really ugly one, but I added falling snow to make it a little bit more still
Mm-hmm.
Unity prototype. So uh, we work on it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that, and then we play it. The designer who made it play it, the lead play it, the design director, the art director, they play it, whoever, and usually the lead artist and whoever else wants to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they tell what their feelings were. How did they feel with different things? Did they feel that they had enough agency? Did they feel that their choice impacted the story, and so on and so on. The questions are constructed for every iteration. So of course, on the basic iterations, for you to feel agency, then every time we finish iteration, I'm like, what's the agency? Have you felt that you are in control? And that's all.
Mm-hmm.
In later, they are like full-blown surveys with answers from 0 to 10, but still it's not a huge group of people. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's not a proper uh, statistically proper sample size. Absolutely not. The
Mm-hmm.
statistically proper sample size goes in a lot later, the players, and then the tone doesn't change so much then, and the meaning and what we are telling and the mechanics, just the balancing, the communication, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Did you have some pillars that you tested it against? Like what you said about agency, agency, we
Mm-hmm.
do have agency. This is basically what I meant by a metric.
Mm-hmm.
And because like when we were doing, for example, Save Koch, for every feature, the metric was, does it make at least anybody on the team giggle? But
Mm-hmm.
it was, despite some gruesome stuff, it was like ultimately like just a vehicle for a bunch of jokes.
Mm-hmm.
And exaggerated. And like you've said with the public house, like you eventually went with the gimmick part. So what are some methods that help you decide what is a gimmick, what is not, and how do you make those decisions?
Oh, okay. So with that law, it was because we tested it internally between the designers, and you sit so close next to your work and you do that research on the most horrible things in human nature, then you lose focus. And I did the public law, the liberation law thing, and I just didn't see it as bad as it was, and it was horrible. And then was that moment where the graphic designers start to go through them, and we start to see their reactions, and that's all. And there are moments on milestones that everybody plays, and just there's no questionnaire or something. We just talk to each other and just fight. And sometimes it's hard. Nope, it's gonna be like that. But sometimes no.
So we're kind of just taking a consensus of the team of whether how it looks, and then you're just horrified by what you have done.
Yeah, exactly.
How often? Just out of curiosity, how often did it happen? What have I done? What have I put into the game?
From time to time, actually, the thing that we have right now is toned down a lot, because that's the thing. If you are sitting next to it really close up front, and you are doing that gruesome thing after gruesome thing after gruesome thing just to show how bad people are, just to make you feel something, you turn it up a notch and you turn it up a notch, because you are getting desensitized and you are just an awful human being at some point. And then you give it to play to a designer who was doing coal mines and who was balancing coal, and he's a person of numbers, and he is not a horrible person as I were, and he was like, Jesus. And that's the moment that you start to scale it, because we actually struggle a lot between two extremes, because the consequences, they have to be readable, so you have to understand what's happening with your society. But on the other hand, they cannot be too gruesome to make you feel something as a that inside designer. So that balance between subtlety and gruesomeness in the narrative tone was a lot. But again, we did it internally, just reading together and having someone who is not so close to things like terminal borrowing .google images, please. So yeah, back and forth. But we are just a team that I think trusts each other, and we trust each other as humans. So if you go to someone who's not doing that things, he will help you. Yeah.
Oh damn.
What, now you are fighting to not Google terminal borrowing.
We have talked previously, and
yes.
I know about terminal borrowing.
Yeah, that one really sticks in my mind.
And again, I'm from St. Petersburg, so Siege of
I
Leningrad
understand.
stories. They
yes. Yep. I'm sorry, you're right.
Actually, about scenarios, because we had a little conversations on Twitter about that, and we're not going to go with it because I think it's just very specific to me. But you get there's a main scenario, the storm is coming, survive. But you have other scenarios, like with arcs, and I'm blanking on everything else.
Yes, with the arcs, with the lords, the fall of Winterhome. The fall of Winterhome, I think, was added after the premiere. So arcs, lords, fall of Winterhome. Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Because I remember arcs, and after that, I had to move on to other things.
Yeah.
So, I'm assuming. I'm not. I won't assume anything. I won't make an ass of either you or me. What was the approach of picking out those scenarios apart from the main one?
So how we came up with what the scenarios are, or why did we add the scenarios? Because I didn't understand the question. So
not why you added, because this is more content and it makes sense completely. But how did you pick the specific scenarios? Because apart from Winterhome, because this feels like a narrative. Loose string.
No, we actually were just iterating. There was a designer, Przemek, whose sole role was coming up with the scenarios, and we had the word that already existed, what happened in there, and the question was, what kind of interesting stories can we tell inside of that world using those mechanics that we have, or those mechanics changed a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just going draft after draft after draft after draft, and we were looking for things that seemed interesting, different enough from the base story, and had some interesting and I think resonating with the present kind of stories, because the Lord, it's about immigration and
Mm-hmm.
about just trying to survive in the moments of them coming, the Lords and the Lords. I also don't remember. It was quite far ago. Far ago. Yes, we will go with my beautiful Polish grammatic. Far ago,
Mm-hmm.
and with the arcs, the topic of preservation and the value of the seeds in the situation that we are the humans found themselves in was interesting, and I think that one especially, I think it can be even more broadly examined, because that's a interesting question, especially in current times when not so long from now we are going to have to preserve a lot of things because they're
Mm-hmm.
going to boil. So yeah.
Yeah, just in reverse. I would argue that the arcs, they are the ones that like resonated at least with me
Mm-hmm.
a lot, and you can like find more stories like this actually
Mm-hmm.
happening a lot. And
Yes.
what is Svalbard seed storage? The one in an actual up
Mm-hmm.
north, just the
Mm-hmm.
seed storage just contains all the seeds
Yes.
in case shit happens.
Yes. Yes.
Keep it in
So
mind.
yeah.
So it was more like just interesting stories rather than what else we can do with the mechanics.
No, it was interesting stories, of course, in terms of the mechanics. So, and you are a scout running through the frozen. No, yeah, that's not gonna be a scenario in Frostpunk because
Yeah.
we don't have the running mechanic at all. But yeah, it was not what we can do in terms of mechanics. It was what we can what we can tell that we want to tell in an interesting way in that world, which is thematic to that world and will build that world up, because also both of those scenarios build on the base question of the game. So how much are you willing to sacrifice? But here the question is framed differently. So how much are you willing to sacrifice for the seeds, for our past, in terms of, because there is in that scenario there is another city that you can help instead of keeping the seeds alive. So this is like, which are you going to sacrifice? You can take care of both, but which one? And in the second one, the question is that was the how much are you willing to survive in terms of us versus others, because you've got those people in the city and people coming in and trying to just keep it in place, and who are you going to put on the altar of survival? Also, as I'm talking, my memories are coming back about the scenarios. So yeah, that's nice.
Oh, that's what happens.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago, so yes. Yeah.
Somebody asked me about a game that I did 10 years ago. I blanked on the name.
Oh, yes,
That was a game that I was proud of for a while.
Oh, okay. I have few. I sometimes blink on the free-to-play games that I did. Not that I don't remember. I just try not to.
Moving like a little bit laterally. So Frostpunk had to follow This War of Mine, which kind of made a huge splash, being like at that point like one of a kind game of the subject matter and of everything. Was there some influence of This War of Mine effect on the Frostpunk design?
There was. First of all, there was immense pressure because This War of Mine was culturally important game, and like really, really big. And I kind of still feel that it's bigger in that term than Frostpunk is. Frostpunk is a different thing, but
yeah, after This War of Mine, I had a bunch of people, a bunch of clients, just coming over with briefs like This War of Mine.
Yeah,
basically.
but with zombies. Uh, no, actually, the community for quite time wants to have a mode to this war of mine with zombies. Yes, no, never going to happen. Still,
Hmm.
in terms of design, yes and no. In the mechanical sense, there is no similarities. But
Hmm.
when we are talking about the metrics, for a quite long time, this war of mine was hunting me at night because in this war of mine, you really care about those little dwellers, right? Those
Hmm.
little humans, and you are like, no, don't die or something, don't.
Hmm.
So you care about them really, really strongly. And at the very beginning, we wanted to have the same thing in Frostpunk,
Hmm.
but that was a really, really hard fight because it's hard to care about a dude of this size,
Hmm.
that size with a face and a picture, this size just walking in snow. So
Hmm.
uh, yeah, that influenced a lot, and actually what happened during the development was not that we get more similar to this war of mine. We just found our unique voice and said, nope, we are doing it totally different. So
Hmm.
when in this war of mine you are playing for at the moment empathy, you see the figurine, you are like, oh, right. Then
Hmm.
in Frostpunk, eventually we found out that we cannot do at the moment empathy on that scale. So we moved for something that we overly fancily later called post playthrough reflection.
Hmm.
So here the idea was not, or it was like, yes, little human, go to walk and do those things, and you just push them, and then when you finish playing, you'd be like, Jesus Christ, I made North Korea. So
Hmm.
not at the moment empathy, but post playthrough reflection. So yeah, this war of mine was a huge part of the process because of the burden that it brought
Hmm.
onto the table.
But eventually, you just had to come like make your own way.
Hmm. Yeah, but I think this war of mine pushed us really strongly into that our own way because it was sitting there, it was staring at us with those perfectly empathizing little humans, and we were like, and so I think that metric was quite influential on uh,
Hmm.
Frostpunk. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, it's also like essentially in Frostpunk, you are fucking up their future
Yeah,
with every decision.
yeah, that's all. Yeah, I'm thinking about this war of mine as a sequel to Frostpunk. So you have that awful society, and then there's war, and then you have those little things. Yeah, yes. Also, the truth is, a lot of designers who did Frostpunk were fresh designers who did not work on this war of mine. So it was
Hmm.
that game of greatness standing behind us that we did not do and did not have that experience. So it was terrifying. Yeah.
Hmm. And now for like the last question, I'm going to bring it all the way back to free to play.
Oh Jesus! Okay, yeah, yes. Okay, let's go. I did extreme sport fishing, and I'm proud of that. I
Not to that extent. Relax,
okay,
relax. Not that extent.
okay.
I have my own flashbacks that I don't want to open doors. Not that free to play is bad. Uh, so
I will vape.
that escalated fucking quickly. What I mean is that like the question of after free to play, you're making a piece. I'm assuming these are either mobile or social something. Oh shit, even my body language is dismissive as fuck. Crap.
Yes.
We need Masha here. Like Masha is way more. Doesn't matter. Let's just
Yeah.
move on. Let's just push through.
Go.
When you ended up going for working for basically a PC title, console title, and everything, and with that like much different, more different audience and so on. What stuff did you have to abandon? What stuff did you have to relearn? And stuff like that.
Mhm. Okay, so coming from the free-to-play market, at least in the terms that I were working at the moment, at that time,
Mm-hmm.
was more hobby games. So it's an interesting thing, place to work for me, but you are not making games exactly, you are making hobbies. So there are different principles. You want to create a little space, a little hobby, a little thing that your player can cultivate, it can grow, you can show it to, he can show it to his friends, and all of that. Doesn't matter if it's a farm, it's a fish collection, it's a Clash Royale deck, whatever. But it is designed to be with the player for a really, really long time. So those interactions with the thing may be short, but in many steps, in many doses. And that's totally different for an immersive experience for me, like Frostpunk. Frostpunk, if you finish it once, it's that. There is no like, if you get back here every day for next 7 days, you will get a new shiny generator. That's not that kind of game. So that's that approach for having, you know, nice chunky experience, that was a thing to relearn, because before free to play I was just doing indie games like little pixel arty permadeath thingies for the mobile phone. So I was just relearning those things. But free to play also gave me a perspective that is useful, because for a while I was doing data science for the free to play. So when we started to have tests for Frostpunk, we could actually apply it to the databases, the proper statistical methods, and see the significance and all of that and all of that. And that was one of the things that were helpful. Also, the free-to-play games that I work on, when I did monetization, they were really math heavy and balance heavy. And that kind of things, when balancing such a complicated system as Frostpunk, were also immensely useful. So there's a set of tools for me, that those low-level tools, really technical tools, that you can get really sharp working on free-to-play and then apply them in terms of that game as Frostpunk, with the benefit, I hope, for the game. So yeah, then of course the narration, the looking at the player, the focus tests, that less, more delivering message, less having huge sales. That is a different, huge sales, big revenue, big in-app purchases. Yeah, that's a different just approach. It's a different business model.
Yeah. Yeah. Shit, that reaction just completely threw me off everything. Why did I not expect that?
I did nothing wrong. I'm smoking mango. You are getting nervous.
I know that I am. Well, we're trying to be inclusive of everything that we're supposed to be designing. All right. So, I think this is
the truth is, I think that just finishing up with the free-to-play, free-to-plays are not inherently evil. You can do free-to-plays right. I'm sorry, no, you can do free-to-plays right. You can do the League of Legends models that kind of way. Those are not bad. But there is a group, and we cannot pretend there is not a group of free-to-play, usually mobile games, that are using strong psychological tactics to get people who are vulnerable for that kind of things in a loop, just to make them spend money and make them miserable. And there is a question of ethics, but this is not a problem, I think, with the free-to-play. It's a broader problem with the market and with the capitalism and with a lot of things. But we have to be aware that not all business practices are okay, and free-to-play, due to its form, are a lot more in danger of using of those practices, because the product is free. So they have to monetize, and it's easy to cross the line, you know. How much are you willing to sacrifice to make a revenue?
Yeah, in a way, Frostpunk is a critic of free-to-play.
It's not a critic, it's a question. Because you can make a golden path free-to-play game, and you can. There are that kind of games. So there is a golden path in there.
Okay. Actually, this is probably an interesting question of like what for you is the message in general, not Frostpunk specifically,
Hmm.
but what? This is not on the list. I should have prepared better. Again, final question. Like we suck at this, at final at segues and stuff. But like there is a question of message in general in video games. So like yours is pretty overt, whether it's a message or a question, right? So just in general as a designer, how would you go for designing a game that is supposed to have a message? And just specific, like, would you go for something specific or just put thesis, antithesis, and make people decide?
Yeah. For me, there's a lot of unpack here because one thing is the question of how concrete your statement should be to convey the message, and this is the unpacking part because what I learned recently is that The Sims is a criticism of capitalism, and it was made as a criticism of capitalism. And in a systemic sense, it does it really nicely because you get money. We are talking about the very first Sims. I don't know what's happening in there now, but you get money, you buy shit. Shit requires maintenance, but also allow you to get more money, so you get more shit. And having more shit just makes you spend more time on maintenance. So suddenly, everything you're doing is maintenance. So it's not capitalism, but consumptionism. I don't know if I can say it in English like that. But just getting more shit is the criticism of that. But the problem is for me that I don't think many people looked on that game in that term. That message just like flew like, you know, the sad story of Monopoly, which was designed to show the hardship of the market, which is now the poster boy.
Yeah, but Monopoly was eventually corrupted into this new sense.
Yeah.
But like, I know what you mean. Like in Gods, when we were talking about Nuclear Throne, and I went deeper into that rabbit hole. And basically, Nuclear Throne is a critique of a pipe dream, whichever it fucking is.
Yeah.
Nobody is looking at that stuff.
Yeah, so this is the question of how much in your face you should put it. There's the subtlety. It's matter how many people should get your message. So that's a separate question. That can also be an artistic decision, and that's all. You just want your mom to know what you are making games about, whatever. But the other thing, this is kind of my topic, and I'm really interested in that, is games are a medium of having an authorial voice, and there is no discussion about that. We can communicate and express ideas through games. And the question is for me right now, there are two things. First, the best way to communicate the things that we want to express, and we can communicate them through the visuals, through the narrative, through the art, through audio. But for me, what is most interesting is transmitting them through systems and through interaction and gameplay, because this is the thing that it's unique for our medium. So this is thing that, but on the other hand, if you don't put it in a nice cozy bubble of words and audio and art, no one is going to get your message. Like with the Sims, which is said. Also, I recently heard that Far Cry 3 is a criticism of over-glorifying gun violence.
Yeah. I think that was the point, like they deliberately put it, and there's a bunch of, not the gun violence, but this type of games, which kind of scams, to be honest, and not using the systems, but there's a part, the main villain is Vas Montenegro, who's a fantastic villain. I absolutely love him. 20 minutes, super memorable. 20 minutes of screen time total, but after you beat him, there's another island. And in terms of narrative, like stakes and everything, like any textual, there's no reason to do that. You are finished with the game, but there's another island. Why would you do that? And this was kind of it's not a deliberate point. It was just like, there's more content. Like, why?
Okay, I have not played that one because the first one did not launch on my PC, and then I forgot about the series. I usually play weird things, but yeah.
Mhm.
So, but wait. So, okay, one thing is putting that message through and finding the right means to say that message. The second thing that I think is worth exploring is how complex the message can be in games and how personal the message can be in
Mhm.
games, because we can experience my view on the simple things, like physical simple things like shooting, running, exploding, whatever. We can make that quite easily. But now I'm the question is how much of nuance and intellectual wondering you can put inside of systems for them to be readable. And I think there are few problems in here. First of all, games are really mm, getting a lot easier year after year to make, but still an engineering endeavor. So it's
Mhm.
not like pure writing a book. You cannot follow after your idea, after your idea, after your idea. You have to engineer that idea, which already kind of puts a hold on the depth of your thought that you are trying to put. This is
Mhm.
one thing. And the other thing is that I'm still not sure that people read games in that way. That I think it has to be kind of explicitly stated that,
Mhm.
hello, this is a game, which is a work, which is a representation of its medium, and someone was trying to say something to you. So
Mhm.
try to deliberately think about the things that you are seeing and don't. So there's a lot of problems
Mhm.
to unwind. But the stories of the hardship of war, how far you're willing to go, or narrative biopic, those things are already proven to be transferable by games. But the question is, how deep can we go with the medium, especially with talking through systems? And this is something I think worth pursuing, and this is something that makes this medium right now so exciting.
And I think it's a perfect cliffhanger because we will talk about it more
Okay.
on the course because this is like the kind of stuff that a student like ask at least several times about the putting message into the game.
Hmm.
So we will come back to that, and you will have to sign up for the course, Narrative Design 101, available in whatever is down below or some other places. And and thank you very much for coming and for doing this stuff.
Thank you.
I love those conversations. It's although this is more tame, there are less references to history,
Yes, yes.
which make it way more fun. But yeah, thank you very much for coming. To everybody, thank you very much for listening. If you still have managed to stay through, and sign up for the course, sign up for other courses in Russian that we have, and follow through. Hey, bye bye
And
bye. F what? What?
follow me on Twitter.
Oh yeah. Oh shit.
No, it's fine. There's a race between me and my work buddies, so I'm using every opportunity. Please
Oh,
help.
then by all means, yeah, follow. What's the handle?
uh, Yeris TR.
We will put
Hmm.
it. We will put it in
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Please
We'll make it
help.
happen. We'll make it happen. All right, and now it's over. Bye.